No, isn't that interesting? Well, no, teachers are the worst. You can talk to teachers and they'll crowd into the back row.
Yeah. Sat in the very front when I was coming along. But actually, I think I'm going to move here so I can have the right relationship tonight.
There you go.
And you?
Except, will I be able to sit? You're going to sit there?
No, I'm going to stand.
Okay. I need to be able to see you. I can't pay attention
unless you can see it. Oh, I can see it. Not attached to it.
You can share screen on this guy. If you do a screen cast, where you just record something.
Your ride is here.
Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Kehillah. We've been here many times. Welcome. I'm Erin Powers. I am the learning specialist here at Kehillah as of October 1st. It's been quite a whirlwind of the last 6 months getting up to speed and trying to get to know everybody in the community at the exact same moment. It has been the most fun I've ever had at work, and we now have, over spring break, it was fully established a Kehillah Learning Center. So we have a nice big space for students to work. It's an L-shaped room so they can be out of eye line from each other. There's an inner room in there where we do small groups and we do proctored test taking. My office is in there now, so everything is all together. And we have some wonderful special furniture. We got some bouncy chairs, kids that need to move. It's just a really nice space, and the kids so far have been extremely appreciative. So it's an exciting time at Kehillah in the world of learning and learning challenges. So a little bit on my background, for those of you who haven't done an extensive Google search on me. I've been in the field for nearly 25 years, and this is all I've ever done. It was my first and only career. So I spent a lot of time in grad school, and I have my general ed teaching credential, special ed teaching credential, master's in special ed, ed therapy certificate, and resource specialist certificate. So I often joke that I have the most expensive wallpaper in the town because it's covered with diplomas. And all along, one of my main emphasis has been ADHD. It's been an interest of mine. It's always caught my attention, so to speak. I lived in San Francisco for a long time. I had a private practice, and I was the learning specialist at Cathedral School for Boys. And then, like a lot of people, when it was time for my son to enter kindergarten, we fled back to the burbs from whence we came. So I'm in Menlo Park, and my son is now in 6th grade at Hillview. My son has severe ADHD. We had tremendous struggles when he was young, and now he's just the test case for success, and I couldn't be more proud of him and the work that he's done. We just cross our fingers for the next 6 to 25 years. So I have ADHD myself. My husband has ADHD, very familiar internally, externally, and that's kind of the background that I come from. So for tonight, this isn't necessarily on ADHD, it's on attention. So, and we're going to be focusing on the concept of attention in general, but you can't really separate the two at this point. So there'll be some overlapping. And you should all have a handout. If you don't, make sure to pick one up from the back table. And the goals for tonight, to get everybody thinking about all kinds of minds and different kinds of learning styles and how every kind of mind has value. For everyone to have a better understanding of exactly what attention means, and for everyone to have some new strategies to try at home, and specifically during homework time. I'm sure none of you struggle with homework the way that I do, but so we're going to start with a little brainstorm here. And my question is, what is attention? If someone says pay attention, what do they actually mean? What are they asking you to do? Focus. And you can just popcorn like we say in the elementary classroom. Okay, focus. What does focus mean? What does it look like? How do you know if someone's focusing?
Do you accept you?
Okay, eye contact.
Listening.
How do you know someone's listening?
Responses.
Ah. Listening, responding.
Not thinking or doing something else at the same time?
So, not multitasking?
Let's call it monoactivity.
I like that. That's better.
Monotasking.
Okay. What else? What does pay attention mean?
Maybe related, block out any interruptions or any other stuff.
Mm-hmm. So not responding to interruptions. Sure.
It could be internal interruption.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Absolutely. What do you think about someone needing to be still? A lot of people, especially classroom teachers, equate stillness with attention. What do you think?
No.
Oh, we've moved beyond that. Very impressive. All right.
But let's talk about why. I mean, it's not enough just to say that being still may or may not express attention. It seems to me that some of the activity that we see, or that I engage in, is unconscious or somewhat automatic. Therefore, below the level of awareness, it may not really be interfering with attention.
So if we're objecting, or I don't know, monoactivity is not necessarily attention. Many people doodle when they listen, and it helps them focus.
I didn't quite hear what she said.
She said she's not sure monoactivity is exclusive to paying attention. A lot of people can doodle or have something else going while they're also paying attention.
Especially nowadays, the kids are doing 2 or 3 things at at the same time. They are answering the phone. They are doing stuff on the computer. They are looking at Facebook.
Right. So some of the things that we think about and we're going to be talking about are they actually paying attention to any of that? And the new research, you may have heard this, but shows that there's actually no multitasking. There's not multitasking going on. It's shifting quickly from one task back and forth to another. So you're not actually accomplishing 2 things simultaneously. So on the one hand, there's that feeding the need for the movement and the shortened attention span that this entire generation is just developing, period. And then there's, some people need to move in order to think. My husband is a pacer. So if he's trying to solve a problem, he paces. Makes me nervous. I'm like, I have to go into another room. I can't. But for him, that's what he needs to do. So, but he's absolutely paying attention. So it can look like different things. And I think the more we think, we're a little bit flexible with our definitions of what attention means, the more empathetic we can stay towards our kids that are struggling with that.
I'd like to,
yeah.
in contrast to all this, if you picture the kids taking the SAT on a Saturday morning from 9 until noon, they're sitting still, they're focusing, and they're not expressing how they feel about doing their homework by fidgeting or listening to music or talking on the phone. So it seems to me that it's very situational, and that if you set walls around us, when all we can do is the one thing that is demanded, even if it's brief, that shows perhaps the extreme of our behavior.
And we'll talk about this more as the night goes on as well, but that is a situation that is incredibly novel, and it's very high pressure, which activates those neurons in the frontal lobe, that even people who are just like completely missing their frontal lobe, even they wake up for the SAT. So for those 3-4 hours, they are on fire, they are focused, they can do it. But there's no way that someone with an attention problem could maintain that, even someone without, could maintain that on a daily basis. So that's actually a situation that's so extreme, it gets everybody fired up and on board. So if you look at the next page in your handout, looks like this. It says reflection. I have trouble paying attention when. So we're just going to take a minute and have you briefly think for yourself, what are some times that you have trouble paying attention? When is attention challenging for you? So who's willing to share one time that you have trouble paying attention? What are some things that are challenging?
Tired or hungry?
Tired, hungry, God forbid both, right?
When I'm very worried about something.
Worried, anxious, stressed.
When there's a lot of ambient noise.
Ambient noise, which is why we now have noise-canceling headphones available for the kids to check out from the Learning Center. They were so excited in study hall, right? I pull these out, they're like, oh, those are awesome. They think they're like the Bose headphones for listening to their music. I'm like, no, I have no cord. They don't attach. They simply cancel out noise. What? But they've started using them. It's
Yeah, that would work for me.
very helpful. Okay, ambient noise. What else?
Not enjoying the task.
Not enjoying the task.
That's the biggest one.
Bored. Uh-huh.
When I'm in pain.
Pain. Ooh, good one. Uh-huh. And the opposite of anxiety or worry is excitement.
Euphoria.
So if you're euphoria, that's a nice word. So, you know, sometimes you're so excited about something you've got coming up, or you're leaving on vacation, whatever it is, and you're having a really hard time focusing that last afternoon in the office.
I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but when I'm just starting something like the administrative project, so once I get into it, I'm okay, but to get started is tough.
Mm-hmm. Getting started,
I
sure.
find that every excuse, I gotta do this, I gotta do that.
Mm-hmm. I was like, my house was never so clean as before finals in college. All of a sudden, that oven just has to be cleaned. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of things that in any given day challenge our attention. And we all know that for whatever reason, sometimes we wake up and we're on and we can do it all day, and other days we wake up and it's just sort of off all day. Sometimes things change in the middle of the day. And I think we have to remember what we are asking of these kids. A school day is long. Their classes are an hour. They have 5 minutes in between. So there's a lot of sitting and listening. No matter how much they may get to move during their classes, no matter how creative their teachers may be in group work and so on, if you've ever followed a child for an entire school day, there's a lot of sitting. And they're better able for it now in high school than they were in elementary. It's still a long day with a lot of sitting, and it's great that they have the open blocks here and they can go across the street. That's all really helpful, but it's a lot of time in a chair, and it's still a lot of adult verbiage. So, especially by the end of the day, you know, you can be really tired by then. So, I try to come at everything from the point of empathy, and of course we all empathize with our kids, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of just exactly what these challenges are they're facing every day. And if they do have ADHD with hyperactivity, by the end of the day, they have expended so much energy just trying to stay in their chair and get their materials from one room to another. They're exhausted. So it takes a toll.
Question?
Yeah.
Are they still in the room? Yeah. So those two back there,
Yeah.
they're the ones who designed the day. Have they designed an optimal day, given what we know about the way kids think and learn? I'm not sure they have.
I think for now, you know, we can always go off on the bigger topic, is homework valid? Should we give homework at all?
No, but we're talking about the daily schedule.
Right, with the daily schedule. I think the way they have up to 2 open blocks on a given day is an excellent model. So they do get a mix of going back and forth, and there is time in the classes that, you know, they get to work independently or they do work in groups. You know, aside from starting the school day at 9 or 10 and going till 6, which wouldn't actually work at a Jewish school, I think for what we have right now, we have a pretty good model, personally.
Really?
What's missing is recess, but there's no high school with recess.
Well, what if the class were 48 minutes instead of 60 minutes? So that instead of, funneling the break into that class period, it were out of it and was a kind of a sandwich, a thin bread around very thick meat.
There's a lot of different things that we can brainstorm, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about these ideas at any time, as are Allison and Sam, but we don't really have time in an hour and a half to get into the nitty-gritty of the scheduling.
I just wonder if the scheduling undermines the kids.
Scheduling for a school is a massive undertaking. It really is, especially the way Kehillah individualizes everything. So again, I think the open blocks and the JCC really add to a lot of fluidity and movement that works pretty darn well for them. Allison?
We also don't have that many classes in a row, so there are input breaks like Kehillah, there's breaks with advisory. So we have, there's lunch.
Bait midrash.
It's really hard to make sure that there aren't 3 or 4 classes in a row, that they're going from class to class to class to class. Right. You know, if they don't.
So it's not as bad as she described it.
It's not as, right. I mean, right.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I want you to take a minute now and look at your table mates, whether that's 1, 2, or 3 people, and briefly share what brought you here tonight. Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, you can, how about, you guys want to join with our friend back there? In isolation?
We disappeared on me. So why are you here? Yeah.
What are we talking about? Why am I here?
My daughter has
It's called the executive functioning. It's supposed to be
whatever the topic is, I'll be there.
Well, evolve, I guess, species develop. So quite often. My wife's a child psychiatrist. That's why you have such a high.
Until 37.
That's why you have such high. I'm here.
Take another minute to wind up your conversation and then bring it back. All right, is anybody willing to share with the whole group why they're here tonight? Don't have to. Anyone?
I'll share.
Yes.
This is a compliment to you. So Jenna wanted me to come
Aww.
because she just thinks you're great.
Aww.
So you go listen to her. So I was planning to come anyway, but
Well, you hear Jenna wanted it.
yeah. And Anna, you can say Anna too.
Jenna and Anna wanted you to come. Excellent. Love it. Anything else?
Yes, I actually came for 2 reasons. One is my younger son, that is not in Kehillah. We're working really hard on attention. He's doing great progress right now. And the second is my own, because my attention is scattered all around the place.
Mm-hmm. How about our kids? Generation, age range. A lot of people end up getting diagnosed as adults when their kids get diagnosed.
Right.
And suddenly they're like, oh, that's why I this, that's why that, that's why this was hard for me. Because we weren't getting diagnosed as kids. It wasn't really done much then unless something was extremely severe. So, all right, what else brought people here tonight? Anything in particular?
Well, I'd like to learn some strategies to help support my son when he's having his
Strategies.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Strategies. All right. So in the world of occupational therapy, if any of you have had your kids in OT, Spent years going with my son. There's a program that someone put out years ago called How Does Your Engine Run? And the basic premise is that we all have an engine inside of us, and we've got our basic speeds, right? We've got high, we've got low, and we've got just right. So when are some times when you actually want your engine to be high? When you want full steam ahead?
During a test.
Test, yep. Sometimes you need that extra, speaking of the SAT, yep, the extra burst.
Deadlines.
Deadlines.
Traffic.
I don't think you want your energy high in traffic.
You've got to be alert to get between those two.
That's right, to worm your way through the carpool lane when you don't belong there. Often with high, the first thing people say is sports, athletics, some kind of event where you're taken off of the starting line. All right, when do you want your engine or your energy to be low? When is that a desired state?
Sleep.
Yeah, when you're trying to go to sleep.
Exactly. You're trying to sleep. You're winding down. It's resting and relaxing time. So, but most of the time during the day, we're going for managing our engines so that they're just right. Now what I find, I've been doing parent talks for many, many years, parents, teachers, all sorts of adult ed, and when it's in the evening, I have yet to find any adults who come in with their energy too high. Usually people are hopefully just right, but there's a lot of heading to the low end. So we're going to take just a second here, and I am going to put this on the wall. Oh, see, I put the colored pens in a special place, so I'll be able to find them exactly. The rule in my house is that mom is not allowed to put anything in a special place, because we'll never find it again. So, I'm going to put this on the wall, and I want everybody to come over here and just put a dot that shows where your energy is right now. We've got many colors. There's room for 6 people at once. We've got all the colors.
Those who cannot move, put them low.
I'm putting one on the low for her. Okay, so you put another low for our friend over there. Everyone else, come on, get up. You gotta get up. You gotta get your blood moving. Get that oxygen to your brain. It's essential. What was that?
Energy or focus?
Both. So just by standing up, you get 15% more blood and oxygen into your brain. So, up,
Brains
everybody.
are out of my feet. I trust it.
Just right for you.
That was funny.
And the faculty too.
Right. Here since 8 o'clock. 7:30, even more commendable.
Huh? Were you? Yeah.
These are things that are really important to remember when your kids are plowing through hours of homework. Sometimes they get hyper-focused and they get really stuck on thinking they just have to keep working, when really what they need more than anything is to take a break. They gotta get up and move, even if it's just to stand up and have a little bit of water. The recent research shows that American teenagers drink 0 water. 0. So if you can just get them to stand up while they're studying and have a drink of water, you're doing better than most of the population.
But see, what Nathan does is he gets up every 15 minutes for a glass of water.
You also have the opposite, and they need to be trained the other way.
At least in the evening.
Yes, yes.
And water all day.
And we're going to talk about that too, but yeah, for those hyper-focused situations, especially when they're studying for a test and they feel like they have to cram and cram and cram, got to get out and move your brain.
How do you distinguish between that, whatever you just said about just not stopping versus you've got your momentum going, so it's good to keep going?
And the whole thing with doing something like this, and that we're working towards with our kids, the fancy word is metacognition, which means thinking about your thinking. It's getting the kids to understand their own learning and their own selves so they can start to judge. At some point, they're going to have to judge this for themselves, right? And for some of you, that's like a year away. So it's for them being able to say, okay, I am really in the zone, I'm writing. That's a great time when you don't necessarily want to break your train of thought. Other times for them to say, okay, I've looked at the same paragraph 4 times, I need to get up. So as they near adulthood, these are things we want them to be getting to understand on their own. And we've been watching them for years, you know. You know when you're looking at your kid if they're in the zone or if they're zoning out. Ooh, that was good. That was catchy. So the point is for them to get to start to understand themselves. Yeah?
One thing I've noticed in Mariana from the past year is now at 11:30 or midnight, she herself seems to be able to recognize, you know what? It's taking me 40 minutes to do what 2 hours ago would have taken me 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is, it seems, more aware now. You know what? I have no more efficiency. I might as well stop.
Exactly.
A year ago, she wouldn't have done that. She would have just kept working until exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
even if it were 2 in the morning.
Even if she's tears.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
However, if they're really interested in something,
Mm-hmm.
they'll put the energy in.
And that is the magic of ADHD. That's the hyper-focusing. When they are engaged and turned on, they will just go, and it's remarkable. That's why some people think people with ADHD make good brain surgeons. Something to think about.
Erin, let me make an observation about that. I think that's also the origin of the curse that parents lay on kids. Because they see this difference and they say, wait a minute, when you're studying for that part in Macbeth, you go all hellfire. We don't even have to remind you of it. And everything else you don't. And so I think it's very easy then to say, hey, wait a minute, where's the problem here? He can do it when he wants to.
If you wanted to, you could do it. Yep.
So I think that's partly their undoing, is that people see, hey, sometimes why can't they do it all the time?
Yep.
And that's where
it's a double-sided coin. So the next page you have here, it says mental energy system activity. In this activity, you and your table mates, just leave it at table mates, you're going to read a quick paragraph about Clara, which is on the next page. It's going to describe Clara, who struggles with mental energy. So you're going to read the paragraph, and then if you see the next page has your paragraph about Clara, and the page after has mental energy system strategies. So directions, paragraph, strategies. So you read the paragraph, take a look at the strategies page, and then with your table mates, this is a group activity, brainstorm 3 strategies that you think would be beneficial for Clara. And you have 5 minutes. Go. make sure once you read it, you start engaging with your table mates.
Problems. You two get up and run around and or you know, so there's that's sort of those things that brings them and incorporates movement. Right. Right. Getting what done. I mean, I suppose you could intersperse it.
It depends what it is we're talking about. Markers usually can if you have an essay to write, then you break and then take half an hour to figure out what the hell you were thinking about, writing about. It's dependent what it is we're talking about.
Give me another 20 minutes.
For playwrights,
For playwrights, for playwrights, I think it makes sense to break for
All right. So you sequence it in an adult way. The point is, give yourself.
Another thing is the kids. That's what I'm saying.
Especially in math.
Before studying, try to figure out
When am I going to do that? Now, why should I not learn?
Okay, so you have about 2 minutes to finish up.
I know. That's everybody, but that's the structure. Much problematic one, as long as you can in my head, then it's easy for me to focus 6:30 rather than 9, because you won't really get this time. No matter what I say.
Well, worst problem.
Right.
Can't figure out your plan?
If you don't like it, I like it. I'm me.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's a little.
Right. That's one. That's other thing.
They just recruit the people.
So I don't know.
This is before the
Whether
iPhone.
listening to music helps you concentrate, or you can listen to music during. It's not its reward.
All right, so if you can bring your attention back up front. What do you expect from this group?
That's the question.
So, when we started talking about attention at the very beginning and what is attention, the word attention is extremely broad. It means a lot of different things. So, decades ago, Dr. Mel Levine and a bunch of his colleagues came up with what they call the developmental construct of learning. And one of their constructs is attention. And they broke attention down into 3 main categories. The first one is mental energy, and the second is processing, and the third is production. So the mental energy is like your stamina. The processing is how you're getting information in and what you're doing with it in there. And then the production is how you get it back out. So this first step here is the mental energy. And as we were talking about, things you enjoy, you find our kids have mental energy for video games for many, many hours. But they may only have the mental energy stamina for 10 minutes of trig. I'm always going to use math as an example. I'm sorry, I'm always going to use math as an example. And I went for trig. I usually go for addition facts. So Clara, what are some strategies we came up with for Clara who is struggling with mental energy? Yes?
Math first.
Math first. All right. So the order that you do your work in.
She's avoiding it, and the more she avoids it, the worse it gets, and the less she has to give to it.
Yep. Okay. What else?
So we wanted to break the problems into smaller sets, and then in between sets, have a dance break or a
Music, whatever she
that
likes.
one because
Yep.
Anna likes that, but or jumping jacks or something to do. With,
Yep.
Walk around the block real fast, whatever.
Yep.
And maybe have music while doing math.
As a reward or whatever.
Or as a reward, either as a reward or as while doing it.
Incentive. What else for helping maintain and sustain your mental energy?
Well, it's not a strategy, but I heard you guys talking about it too, and we talked about it, which is getting to bed earlier.
That's a strategy.
Yeah. I mean, that's really late to be consistently going to bed after midnight if you're having if you're having difficulty with sluggish energy levels.
Yeah.
And you're getting up at 6:30 or whatever it is, regardless of what time you go to bed. Yep. Okay.
Back to math, trying to relate it to real world examples.
Only if you have the ability to do so.
Right.
Something that always failed me.
Get a math tutor.
Yep. Sometimes you need a tutor. Absolutely. Or at Kehillah, go meet with your teacher. My teacher doesn't like me. Go meet with your teacher and your teacher will like you. I can't tell you how many times they come back, wow, Ms. Powers, I met with my teacher and I'm doing so much better now. What do you know? That's fantastic. Oh, our energy just fell.
The patient died.
I lost him on the table.
Is my teacher dislikes me sort of a manifestation of how I feel about the subject?
Certainly can be. There's a lot of different things it can be. And keep in mind, teachers are human. Occasionally they don't like somebody, and the kids pick up on that. But for the most part, it's their fears, it's their doubts, or it's like they know they haven't turned in some homework, and they feel bad about it, so they assume the teacher doesn't like them, or the teacher has kept them back in class and said, we got to talk, I got to make this accountable, and they think, that means my teacher doesn't like me. Some kids have trouble interpreting tone, and I think, just because a teacher uses certain words or a certain tone, it means the teacher doesn't like them. There's so many things that go into that, but I would have sworn every teacher I had through elementary and middle school hated me. And I look back on it and I was like, I think some of them really did, but I think some of them not so much. So it's hard. The teen perspective is not necessarily matching the adult perspective.
What about having an actual schedule for the evening?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Maybe
And these are the
sit down and
things.
make a plan with your kid while you give them a nice snack and talk
Yep.
over the schedule.
Yep.
Have them involved in making them.
Is getting them to take some of this on themselves. I bet a lot of you have tried a lot of these different things and throughout elementary school, and you hit a point where you're just sick to death of it, and so sometimes you kind of take a break and then you're like, okay, I gotta kind of get back in the game. It waxes and wanes with you too because you're very human, and we have to forgive ourselves and allow ourselves to be human, especially if we have challenging children. It can really take a lot out of you. So these things, the more you're kind of doing this with the kid, and you're saying, to your son or your daughter, all right, mental energy, let's talk about, name it, be transparent, it's fine. We're going to talk about mental energy. I see that when it comes to reading, you can sustain your mental energy for quite a long time. But when it comes to math, your mental energy fades pretty quickly. So, what can we do about it? Let's brainstorm. Okay, out of the brainstorm, let's pick 2 things. Don't want to try to change everything at once. Pick 2 things that we're going to try for the next 2 weeks, and we're going to see how it goes. And at the end of 2 weeks, we're going to evaluate. Did it work? Fabulous. Did it fail? Good information. Was it somewhere in the middle? Do we need to tweak it? Sure. So it's about experimentation, but it's about them starting to take that ownership so they learn, so they know when they go to college, you know, they should schedule 3, I'll do this for Allison, 3 English type classes in one day. So, you know, and they can just start noticing those things. It's the same for us as adults. If you come into work and you're having a low mental energy day, that might not be the best day to try to start a brand new giant project. So it's learning to gauge ourselves. Yeah.
So when the kids like come into like, if they have you for study hall or the learning thing, do you like talk to them about these things, and are you so you're telling them about mental energy and things like that? Okay. That's great.
Trying. You know, it's funny, they don't always want to hear what I want to share.
Gee.
My brilliance falls on deaf ears at times. It's weird, I don't know.
They probably listen to you better than their parents.
That's kind of the hope. I hope the same thing for my kid, that there's people out there that he's listening to more than me. Yeah.
It's not on the strategies list, but one thing we did with Erin in the 9th and 10th grade is to remove external stimuli. So we had him check in his cell phone and his iPod.
We're just going to put that under screens. Big shiny box for screens. Managing your screens, managing your screen time, managing your internet options.
Yeah, but when a kid has a computer to go back and forth between the homework and YouTube, that's very difficult.
It is hard when so much work is on the computer now. Yeah. We didn't make him check in his computer, just his phone and his iPod.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you can take away the internet though. And
Yeah,
you can take away specific sites as well.
Oh, then you're going to be working full time.
There's software called self-control and the kids can use it themselves, and you can set it to turn off you can set it to turn off internet access or certain internet access for certain periods of time, so they're simply locked out. You set it for 40 minutes, no Facebook.
All right, so they set it and then they're stuck with it for that period of time,
Right.
which is good.
And then when that 40 minutes is up, hey, now you can check your Facebook, or however you want to do it. But there's actually ways out there now, and yeah, you can always turn off the internet. They know how to turn. They also know how to turn the internet back on. It's not rocket science at this point. Self-control. And I'm sure there's others out there like it. Yeah.
A strategy that we seem to have had some success with Mariana, and probably a lot of other kids. She goes in her room, she closes the door. We don't know where her mental focus and attention is, so we've had her come out to either the dining room table or the kitchen table to work. Now, we're not looking at her screen, but mentally, I think she understands. When I sit down at the kitchen table, I'm here to work. When I go back into my bedroom and I'm sitting on my bed, then I can Skype or do whatever. But a special place for working seems to have helped a little bit.
The #1 recommendation that's coming out of schools, research, parents, everywhere, is no computers in the bedrooms. Computers in public spaces only. And boy, are they going to fight you on that.
Yes.
In some houses it works, some houses it doesn't. It's just something to keep in mind. Yeah?
2 comments. One is my kids know the neighbor's Wi-Fi.
Of course.
So I try the locks. No, it doesn't.
You just go without the power.
I to tell the neighbors to change the password. The other one is, as I look at the suggestions and the list here, it just seems there are things that are much easier to enforce or implement when you have kids in elementary or middle school. At this age, it's exponentially much more difficult to get them to do any of this.
Yep.
To even acknowledge the fact that you want them to do this.
Yep. And at the very end, kind of some of the final thoughts are around what actually works, and I can just skip to the end now and tell you. If you're talking about bona fide ADHD, which I'll do for a moment, they've been researching this for 50 years. What works is checklists, positive incentives, and by teenagehood, negative consequences and medication. Period. Everything else is sort of maybe this, maybe that, try this, try that. A lot of people have different feelings about medication. I'm not saying everybody has to be on medication, but according to the research for what works, And once they're balanced on medication, if that's what they need, then the strategies are able to be implemented. So even if you don't have ADHD, this idea of checklists, incentives, consequences, that's pretty much it. So there's different ways you can create checklists and so on, and you want them to be creating them for themselves and so on. You know, before they're 16, you've got those car keys hanging over their head. That's the best incentive that was ever put on this earth for parents. And screen time. In my house, it's screen time. You know, if you want to earn your screen time, you have to blank. Or if you don't blank, I'm taking your screen time away. That actually gets me compliance just about every time. So those things, it just has to be part of it. You know, it's taking that hard line around the boundaries, because it is their job as adolescents. Their #1 job is to push boundaries. So our #1 job is to give them boundaries, but, you know, have some flexibility and some accommodation and some incentives in there so they don't, you know, you don't want them to feel like they're in prison. But
so if you take a step back, I mean, the biggest issue for us is where to get the information to make the checklists. Because if you have a kid that has attention issues and they're missing what's assigned, and some of the teachers are fantastic about putting it up, but some of them aren't.
I thought everybody was putting it in
No.
schools, you know.
Well, not necessarily like what's coming up.
Yeah,
For future planning is difficult.
For future planning.
What's tomorrow's assignment, it's okay.
right.
But what's coming what's big assignment coming 2 weeks from now is not always that.
Right, and that would be very helpful for some kids, it really would, for our kids, for example.
So what about strategies to get to the strategies?
And you know, there is no perfect system. I was going to get to this in a bit, but again, I'll get to it now. So Schoology is amazing, and Power School is, I mean, both of those are amazing tools, and I have to say, of the places I've worked and the schools that I've interacted with, we do an incredibly good job here.
Yeah.
Like an incredibly good job of being up to date. Some teachers are better than others, certain time periods, sometimes they don't get it in, but for the most part, it's pretty incredibly reliable. And like you said, sometimes there's a few teachers that'll say in 3 weeks this is coming up, but a lot of it's not necessarily the long term, so that's something we can actually talk about. But what our kids do, they go on Schoology and they say, okay, like this is what's due tomorrow. And then they do those things. And what I'm working with them on in study hall is taking a step away from that and saying, okay, here's what Schoology says. What is your plan? So Schoology says English vocab test on Friday. And the phrase, and a lot of the teachers use this as well, is backwards planning. If your test is on Friday, what should you be doing Thursday? Well, by Thursday, all your reviewing, your review sheets, study sheets, everything is done. All you should be doing on Thursday is your last review. So what are you doing on Wednesday? What are you doing on Tuesday? And you back it up, and they have the plan. So if Schoology built in the plan for them and did everything for them, that would be great. But at a certain point, you also have to have the skills and do it on your own. So, so that's the piece that's missing. They look at Power School and they see what they're missing, and they'll go, oh, I'm missing 3 Spanish assignments. Okay. But there's nowhere that that's getting recorded. Like, okay, Monday I'm going to do my 1 missing assignment. Tuesday I'm going to do my 2nd one. And Thursday I'm going to do my 3rd. So, you know, that's when you go back to the old-fashioned day timer. Yeah. We got a couple of them in here that keep incredible day, you know, planners, yeah, just homework calendars. Yeah. We've got iCal, we've got Google Cal, we have phones, we have reminders, we have ringy-dingies and binging bobbies, and you know, most of them are checking Schoology on their phones on a regular basis. So it's getting them to make that plan, and some parents are able to do that with their kids still, some are not. It's the nature of the relationship, it's the nature of the kid, it's not good, bad, right or wrong, it just is what it is. And that's what I'm here for. We have a lot of teachers that do that with the students, and when they go meet with the teachers, they sit down and help them plan out all their homework for the week. That's what advisory is for. So there's a lot of resources here to help them with that. And at the same time, we can't capture everybody all the time for everything, but we really have a lot in place to try to support them with that till they're able to be independent. And one of the things we're talking about as a staff is what's appropriate for freshmen and sophomores And then what are the shifts towards even more independence that are appropriate for juniors and seniors? And, you know, the blessings of a skinned knee. When do you let them fall? When do you, you know, keep them built up?
Yeah.
So, okay, quick note on alertness tools. There's a few things that can make a big difference. Water, in and of itself. Water bottles with the pop top, like the sports bottles, because it makes you suck when you drink it down, or a smoothie through the straw. Something that makes you suck actually helps calm the brain and reorganize your thinking. Chewing gum, big one. I love gum. I keep meaning to bring it in, but I'm afraid about making things kosher or not kosher, or what's allowed in the school. So,
Bazooka.
Bazooka, that's right. That's right, the Passover gum. Gum is a really big one because it's not just that it gives you something to do, it's providing your brain, your body, with deep pressure, which sends signals to the neurons in your brain to click into place and focus. Movement breaks, we talked about that. Spicy snacks like pickles, beef jerky, cinnamon candies. I used to give out a lot of sucking candies because you get the sucking, and then if you do cinnamon, you've got the intensity. Chewy snacks like bagel, fruit leather, gum, pretzels. They can all help with that organization. If they're falling asleep over the table, they need some movement. You can't, when you're like this and you're half asleep, you can't force yourself to just get information in. So, and then to slow down, look at the slow down suggestions. They're not so good for this age. But when you're just too hyper and you can't get focused, again, movement. It's movement in either way. So some people have a trampoline, 10 minutes on the trampoline. Pull-ups, chin-ups, push-ups, wall push-ups, anything, again, that gives you that deep pressure and gets you moving. Swimming, incredible for, you know, whole body organization. So go for a swim and then do your homework. Or, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but that's one of the biggest things that can keep them going. I have a little tip here on the next page. I teach them slants. The idea is to fake out your teacher, but if you actually do all these things, you are actually paying attention. So, the S is sit up. L, look at the teacher. A, act interested. N, nod your head. T, track the teacher with your eyes. And then S is mine, smile once in a while.
Actually, you can write to fake out your boss.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
Your boss doesn't smell.
Is it the same?
I'm not sure what he said.
Well, it's the same.
Okay, that was a good moment. And then that, you've been sitting here for an hour. You got it once to walk over there, but you need to stand up again. And this time we're going to do a quick brain gym stretch. Very specific, two very specific stretches. The idea with brain gym, you can look it up if you're interested, but it's that we need to cross the midline. We've all got this line down the middle of our bodies. You need to cross it to keep both sides of the brains awake and connecting with each other. So simply put your hands together like this in the weird twisty way. Bring them up. Put your right leg over your left leg. I'll just take a few deep breaths. And then we're going to do a cross crawl. If you've got trouble with your knees or your back, don't worry about it. But basically, you want to go opposite sides 10 times. 2. It's not aerobics class. You don't have to feel the burn. 3, 4, 5. Yeah, make sure you're crossing the midline and not doing the same side. 10. Okay, there you go. Have a seat. Get ready for your next activity.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does lack of sleep relate to all of this? So if they're getting it all done, I can't remember if at this age it's 8 hours or 10 hours.
It's like teenagers are supposed to get 10 or 11 hours a night.
Oh.
Like usually 2 to 3 hours more that they need than they're getting. Yeah, this is an age where they actually physiologically need a lot of sleep because they're growing so much.
So
And
can they
they're
catch
just
up
not
on the
getting it. You know, that's generally what happens. And a lot of people say just let them because they need it. But in terms of like good sleep hygiene, that's not supposed to be the best plan, to sleep alone.
As far as I can tell, all the kids in this school are up on Facebook until 12 or 1 every night.
Not my kid.
As far as I can tell.
No, mine's on at 11.
Until about 11 or so, yeah.
I've heard students who shall remain nameless say, yeah, I set my alarm for 3 in the morning, and we all met online for like 2 hours before school. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. Like, no wonder you're falling asleep. So the sleep is huge. That could be a whole talk in and of itself. There's a lot of research going on around it right now. It's definitely a hot topic, but it's
just
huge.
Wondering, is it a long-term, is it going to be a problem down the road?
Yeah, we don't know. Do you know that the recommendation is all screens off an hour before you try to go to sleep? Because that's what your brain needs to, and that's supposed to mean TV too. Like no screens for an hour before. Turn the lights low in the whole house. Not doing anything that's using your brain. I mean, how many of us are basically doing, and then we just fall into bed? I know I certainly do that many nights.
What about reading in bed? Does it depend on the, I can't.
It depends what you're
without-
reading.
I can't go to sleep without reading.
Yeah, I can't either. You know, I'm always reading some kind of fiction at night. If you're reading to learn, no, because that's going to keep your brain waves awake. But if you're just reading along with your story, absolutely.
I can read a whole page in an hour.
Okay, so we're going to move on. The next is the processing system activity. It's exactly the same as the mental energy. You have a paragraph. After the paragraph, you have a list of strategies. And then you're going to try to, with your table group, try to brainstorm 3 possible strategies. You can use the strategy list. You can also use other things we've talked about tonight or things you've used at home that have worked. Anything. It's open season. So, and again, 5 minutes. So it's Jason.
So several of them have to do with postpone the spelling. I mean, do everything you can. Yeah.
They're all good. I had a hard time with starting scratch. Yeah. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So
There is no solution. Jake cannot spell, I cannot spell. When I was thinking, I was saying somebody who was going to create the spell check of a whiteboard going to get number prize from me directly.
My first thought before I even looked at this.
That's a problem for a teacher.
Well, I was teaching.
Yeah, all these ideas.
Yeah. Not kids, but.
No.
5, they might not
No.
have 25. If
That's
there's
right.
a few minutes there, that's
That's why, I mean, it's
You cannot write.
that's why.
He cannot. He like, he was like us, he cannot handle.
They also don't teach, didn't teach grammar.
I never heard of cops.
Not really. Sometimes kids. I love that grading system. Very exciting.
I am missing something. No, I wrote
The problem with Microsoft Word is that I'm typing what I'm typing. He doesn't recognize the word.
So,
By, you know, so Word will fix it, but it will fix it into completely something which doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right, and he visually doesn't see that it's wrong.
Well, if he's having trouble with grammar too, then Microsoft Word really can't. Because it's dependent on grammar.
Well, no, it can tell grammar and some of it.
And it's not very,
It's not very good.
Right, but wrong impediments.
The only issue
No, most kids don't realize, what most not realize is that writers don't just produce a finished piece. That what writing actually
They never do.
is producing crap
They see
that fits whatever
Right.
their vision is of what it's supposed to be.
And
But
what
they
they
have to
do
but they
is
have to be trained. They
try
have
to force him to allow
how
to
to
fix it. But
deal with
it's
it.
allowed
Oh,
to
God,
hear
this is awful.
He hears it.
That's just
Because when
one
you
of the
see
things.
no, but you think that it's wrong word.
Yeah, really stage.
It's easy autocorrect because he knows it.
And that what
He
he
is,
does as a writer.
but when he looks
is clean it
and
up.
reading it,
You know, add
just
in what's
doesn't
missing.
see
Add
it. First word,
what's missing. Take out a piece, add in some.
last word, and put whatever he wanted to put in between. Whether it's written or not, it doesn't matter.
Is to show
He knows what he wanted to say, that's what's going on.
what a marked up piece of paper looks like. And it's like, okay, this was
You
the
take
first
about a
one.
minute
Here,
more
marked it up, and then this is
finish
the
up.
you know, copy. But a copy that's good does not come out at the first pass, ever.
or little kids, they just want to get it over.
Sure, they want to listen to what they need to understand. I mean, you know, I know Mariana comes home and they talk about first drafts. And
So then, you manage to understand.
So they are working through stages.
It's not like.
For a kid who just sits
Kids
down.
just want to, they want to touch their over and over.
The only way I know is to force him to read it aloud. And next time. Just push.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, or, you know, if you shoot 100, so maybe 25 of your shots that day are really right.
He doesn't have the right problem.
And that's the level.
That's a problem. He doesn't even have the right problems.
He doesn't have all the right problems.
The other 75,
The writing and the
problem.
spelling and no.
but
These problems are fine with me. No, I mean, like, he doesn't have trouble getting all his ideas out. It's only the spelling.
no, but they have to be
Right.
And I think in so many, we're saying.
The writing, that's the
grammar,
production.
spelling,
Yep.
it's the whole
I do
thing.
market
Yep.
motion copies, sometimes I'm a ghostwriter.
Okay, so for processing,
And you know, in German-
what are some things that you think could help poor struggling Jason?
Shoot 'em.
Shoot him. All right, that's one suggestion.
We thought he should get all his thoughts down and worry about spelling later.
Yeah.
Huh?
Not worry about it at all, use Microsoft Word.
Or that.
Well, spell checkers are not infallible. They do make mistakes. They can't tell TO from TOO.
And for that, he needs to read aloud what he wrote.
There is a really amazing website, and I can't think of the name of it right now, that does a very, very, very good job, but it's expensive. It's grammar.
What if they're handwriting it and there's no computers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then homework never gets done.
You might be able to turn.
No, you
it on.
might introduce them to a dictionary, right?
Good luck with that.
But actually, we had a question. What about, using handwriting as a kind of a wake-up mechanism? Because it definitely, fine motor skills develop the brain. So could it also be used, not just doodling, but writing things out?
It depends. A lot of kids with different kinds of learning issues have graphomotor issues, which is basically like really weak handwriting, and practicing handwriting and writing things down does not work for them, does not cement the ideas in their mind. It doesn't have that function. If they don't have the graphomotor issues, then absolutely, that's a way to engage. I used to take all my notes by hand because I just needed that, like that kinesthetic reinforcement. So it, again, depends on your learner.
What kids need to be taught about writing is that writing is really a process of rewriting.
Yep.
And that you have to be willing to produce crap and then clean it up. And until they learn that what first appears will not be satisfactory to them, and that that's just a stage that a piece goes through, they're going to suffer unnecessarily. So, a very famous editor, Bruce Brugman in The Guardian, said, "Write when drunk, edit when sober." So, the process of writing is a process of expelling or expression. Editing is a process of cleaning it up, and they need to learn that your first draft is not your final draft. That what you then do is rewrite.
All right, what else for Jason?
Just a comment that, that I made on the table is that the kids just want to get it done.
Right.
Right.
They don't want to revise and edit and check. They just want to
Done.
Yes.
500 words.
Done. Yes.
And I love the ones, okay, I have 476 words, okay? There is more, okay? That's 479 words. I'm like, people, you are so missing the point. It's pretty fascinating to watch.
It's 5 sentences.
Right, exactly.
Right. Paragraph.
So, this is where, especially in high school, the teachers really come in.
Yeah.
Because the teachers here, they do a lot of writing, they do a lot of rewriting, they do a lot of getting scored along the way, and the hope is that if they turn in crap, they're going to get a bad grade.
Right.
Occasionally they turn in crap and they get good grades, and then you have nothing to argue with. But for the most part, they turn in crap, their grades are going to be crap, for lack of a more formal word at this point in the evening. And the teachers here, they're really great about saying, okay, you have a chance to rewrite, you have a chance to raise your grade, and that's that process. So, this is the point where, as the parent, there's only so much you can do on that issue. It's kind of up to the teachers to beat it into them. And again, meet with their teachers. The more you can encourage them or reward them for meeting with their teachers, the more effective it's going to be. So what else? Oh, sorry.
I have a question. You mentioned the word reward. Is that something that you recommend, to reward them for doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't mean, you went to meet with your teacher today, here's $20. You'd go broke in a day. But again, if you're talking about actual ADHD, the actual ADHD brain is lacking stimulation in the frontal lobe. One of the first things that gets it there, it gets that frontal lobe going, is incentives. So you need to use that to your advantage. So again, you're working on one goal. So our goal is for you to start going to your teachers. So when you go and meet with your English teacher 3 times, you get 2 hours of screen time on a Thursday night, which you normally never get. Things like that should just build it in. And hopefully, the idea is they start to improve in their skills, their grades improve, and then you don't have to keep doing that forever. But kids with ADHD, they crave novelty, they crave stimulation, they have to have it if they're going to get anything done. And it's the same with the consequences, If this is our deal and you break the deal and you're flunking English, then no car, no parties, no privileges, no screen time, no take it away. Sorry. Don't tell anybody else I said that, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clean out the house, have nothing left. It's remarkably effective. And again, you have to know your kid. There's certain kids that would just send them over the edge, but for the most part, consequences, incentives, balance. Anything else for Jason before we get on to our last points of the evening? Yes?
Well, a simple highlighter. I thought it was like
low tech.
Low tech, like have him highlight the stuff he doesn't know and then move on.
Yeah.
So that he doesn't have to worry about forgetting about it or.
You know how few of our kids know how to effectively use a highlighter? They get the whole paragraph is blocked out in yellow and all of that. Absolutely. Highlighting it. I would add like the Post-it notes to that. Those little notes that you jot in the margins along the way.
How about anticipating a difficult situation? It says, then he has to end up waiting until after dinner. Why don't they just plan to do it after dinner?
Uh-huh. Anticipation, planning. Mm-hmm. So, I don't have a production system activity for you because there's never time, but for your own review, there's a list of strategies as well. The production is the getting it out, the creating your final products, and then getting that into the teacher. I think the biggest hindrance I see for our kids across the board is getting it printed and getting it into the teacher's hands. How many times have you seen them do it? You know they did it, and you see them put it into their backpack, you see them put it in the correct place, and yet somehow it never ends up in the teacher's hands. It's such a big issue. So it's that production, it's getting that stuff actually done.
The printer ate my homework.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Like, well, then you're gonna have to do it again. I'm thrilled that in the Learning Center now we have computers with a printer attached just for us, because I lose kids in study hall. They're like, well, I gotta go print this out, and I can't chase after them 20 minutes later. They're back, and they're like, oh, I didn't print. So that's one problem that's gonna be solved.
Have you had any success teaching kids how to make a mind map?
I've done a lot with elementary. At this age, generally, it's being done in the classrooms, forms of outlining or mind mapping.
Because the linearity of the traditional outline is not the way the brain is organized. And sometimes for these disorganized kids, if they can see it as a network, it's much easier to visualize it and organize it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we definitely have teachers that use that here. And again, it's a learning style thing. For me, I have to have the traditional outline linear. I can't stand using mind maps. I'm actually going to write a paper. But for a lot of kids, especially when they're sort of more visual or more artistic, or their brain is going in 6 different directions at once, it can be really helpful. I love mind maps for brainstorming. Initially, there's all sorts of different ways you can use it.
Getting it linearized from that is no feat. That's something, that's a whole different setup.
So if you've ever used the inspiration software, it's brilliant because you can do it in either form, and then you click a button and it switches to the other form. So you can do it as a mind map on inspiration, and then you click a button and it's in a traditional outline.
Right.
So that's really helpful. You may still have to rearrange things in sequence.
Assuming you put them in the right
Right, assuming there's some cluster. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure we get through a couple of things and have at least a few minutes for Q&A. I'll be here after. And by the way, if I work with your kids and I haven't met you, please come up and introduce yourself and let me know who your kids are. I'm trying to get to know everybody here. The next page you have in here is a homework time prediction sheet. People with ADHD are what we call time blind. Teenagers are somewhat time blind in general. And the boys, this is just the brain, it's not sexism, the boys have an extra hard time with those concepts of time. So the homework prediction is to say, what is your assignment? How long do you think it's going to take? Set a timer. How long did it take? And you get both ways. You get, God, I can do that in 15 minutes. 2 hours later, they're like, okay, that English paper was really hard to write. It just pains me to say.
Writing is hard.
Writing is hard.
Writing is hard.
Or the opposite, this is such a huge assignment, I'm never going to get it done. It's going to take me 2 hours. And once they get through that in 15 minutes, it's actually done and it's great. So getting them to start to see how much time things really take. And if you do this over enough time, over a long enough period of time, they start to develop a sense of time. They start to learn. They start to be able to predict. And this is something I do with them in study hall all the time. What are you going to work on? How long do you think it's going to take you? How long did it take you? So just like practicing that. This is something I just made on my computer. You can easily make anything that's going to suit your students' needs, or have them make it. Again, this is for them to be able to own these skills. The next page is just a quickie, rate your ability to pay attention. This is for students to use for themselves. Just start thinking about where their attention is strong, when their attention is weak, what they can do to manage it. And then, basically we're at the end here because I kind of covered a few of the things. So the strategies, again, checklists. That means not just looking at Schoology and saying, okay, this is what I have to do, like I said before. Or not just looking at PowerSchool and saying, oh, I'm missing 3 Spanish assignments. It's actually making yourself a list. Today, what am I going to do? And then you predict the time. How much time am I going to spend on each assignment? Okay, what's my total amount of time for the day spent on homework, including breaks? Schedule in your breaks. Okay, how long did it really take? How long did these assignments take, and so on. So you're putting that all together. They're responsible for it. They got to go through and check it off. If they don't get it done at the end of the night, they don't get it done. Especially, oh, it's so hard, especially as they get older. We'll see what I say when my son's actually in high school not doing any of his work. So far, I'm sticking with this sometimes. They just don't get it done and they have to take the consequences. You know, because we want to support them. The idea is to scaffold them, to give them the steps that they can do it on their own. If you do have ADHD, these kids are 3 years behind. 3 years behind in executive functioning, which is that ability to organize and plan. So, not saying they're 3 years behind intellectually, or that you should treat, you know, an 11th grader like a 9th grader, but organizationally, that's where they are. And so if you think, you know, oh my Lord, my junior is just not doing anything, everything's chaos. If you think, well really, I've just shoved a 9th grader into a junior schedule, they might be doing better than you think. So it's the scaffolding, it's the giving them the steps so that they can do it on their own. And just, you know, a lot of talking about it. And if they can't hear you, then find someone else to do the talking. Whether that's me, whether that's the teachers, whether that's a therapist, whether that's a learning specialist, whether that's a homework coach or a homework buddy. There's a lot of different options for that. But, because it's also, if you're hammering homework all the time, then you don't have a relationship with your kid. And your relationship with your kid is going to last a lot longer than high school. So you have to preserve that relationship.
You know, my endocrinologist told me that her son had ADHD, and she ended up hiring a Stanford student to just come and sit with him at the table while he did his homework. And that alone, having the presence of another person who's there with you, you're sticking to it, they're, I don't know, helping you in whatever ways, that made all the difference. Plus it got them out of the loop.
That's what's more important.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It was so having somebody there is
absolutely. And they're much less likely to wander off into Facebook or this or that or the other thing when there's someone else there.
Okay.
So attention problems, ADHD, attention, all those issues, they have to do with regulation, right, with self-regulation. So that includes emotional regulation. A lot of these kids kind of struggle more with managing their emotions. It's time, it's regulating their time, it's figuring that out. It's regulating their bodily needs, their food, their water, their sleep. And the thing about ADHD is it is 24/7. There is no relief, ever. So it affects every single aspect of their lives. So if you share it with your child, you understand. If you don't, it's an important thing to keep in mind. Which doesn't mean it's like this horrible thing that's weighing on you and it's going to ruin your life or it's a curse of any kind. But it's just something that lives with you all the time. And I think sometimes there's certain other challenges in life that you might get a break from on the athletic field, or you might at least get a break from when you sleep. But you know, being always requiring some amount of management and awareness. So the more we can give them around the structure and the scaffolding, the more successful they're going to be. So one last thing before we end. If you want to read anything, this is the book to read. This has become my ADHD Bible. And I teach a course called ADHD in the Classroom for Teachers. And this is the only book that I use in the class. So I'm like, forget the DSM-4, forget the psychological textbooks, forget everything. This is the book. This is written by a young man named Blake Taylor, who started writing it when he was in high school, sophomore year of high school. He grew up in Hillsborough. He was at French American High School in the city. And he got it published his first year at Berkeley. He's now in med school, the only openly ADHD med school student in his class. And he specifically wrote this for teenagers with the idea that they could read it and they could get some suggestions for how to help manage themselves. And it's a fascinating book because this is a boy with a lot of privilege. And he had everything available. He had therapists, he had ed specialists, he had a mom who was just awesome. He was on medication from the start. I mean, everything that you could need. And he still, each chapter is a different story, where he's written some story about some aspect of the disorder and some crazy thing that he did. And then at the end is what he learned from it and what he suggests. So even with all that help, he still goes off in a boat and gets lost and they have to call the Coast Guard, and, all this one thing after another. So it's an amazing read, and there's nothing like this that I found that puts yourself into the head of someone that actually has this disorder. I think it's great reading for anybody, because the stories are just wonderful and you learn about another type of person from yourself if you don't have it. So, like Taylor, what's it called? It's ADHD and Me, What I Learned from Lighting Fires at the Dinner Table. Literally, one of the chapters is devoted to when his little sister started a fire, and he was like, ooh, interesting. And so he did things to make the fire bigger. So then the entire kitchen is on fire. So, ooh, interesting. It doesn't tell you how to start fires, really. So any final questions, final remarks, things you'd like to hear more of at another time?
How do you get the person with ADHD to become more self-aware of their behaviors if they aren't displaying a particular awareness of it?
Conversation, talking about ADHD. Sometimes there tends to be a lot of social skills challenges for people with ADHD. So sometimes you need to work with a speech pragmatic person or with a social skills group or a social skills coach to help them be aware of their behaviors and how, just different ways to interact with people in different situations. So it kind of depends exactly what the need is that you're talking about. And we can talk more about that if you want to.
Something you could talk about another time is how to get some of these strategies implemented when your child says, I don't have it, I don't need it, leave me alone.
I'm going to be talking to that boy this week, by the way. Yeah, again, it's really tough. I mean, and the education, is this time you go to a family therapist and work on it together, have a mediator, have someone else helping you with it. Allison?
Doesn't it though start with doing a full battery of educational testing?
Absolutely.
An objective source can sit down with the child and say, here are your strengths, here's where your challenges are, and you have blah, 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 whatever it is, so that it's not just coming from mom, dad, a pediatrician, who they go, they don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
I think that would
Absolutely.
be the very first place I would go, so that the kid can't go, we've got hard data from, et cetera. Yes?
And it can be really empowering for the kids to go through that process. So a lot of these kids have an underlying belief underneath all the bluster and whatever, that they're stupid and that they're broken and there's something wrong with them. So they go through the testing. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find a kid who's really, really bright with some incredible aptitudes, but they're going to have weakness in active working memory. They're going to have weakness in processing speed. Sometimes they'll have the graphomotor weakness. And when it's broken down that way, then you can look on and say, oh, look at that. I really am good at all these things. And the reason why I still don't know my multiplication tables when I'm 15 is because my active working memory is just something that's weak. So I know I need to work around that. Yeah, there's a lot of empowerment in that process, especially as they get older.
It can be upsetting, but I think it also really gives them a way to understand their own experience.
And it gives them someone else they can talk to about it.
Yes.
Does it make sense for you to put some of this online, do a blog, an interactive blog, something like that?
Well, it's being taped. Sam, where does it go from here?
From here, it's going to be on the school YouTube channel, and it should be accessible through the blog.
What was the last thing? I missed the last.
Should be accessible through the school blog.
But not just this, but maybe interactive, which I guess is part of the blog.
Absolutely, and my goal is to have as much of this going on as possible and as much conversation and opportunity for interaction. I invite all of you to come by the New Learning Center. I'm in the room 90% of the time, so come on in, say hello. You can always, email me, set up a time to talk or set up a time to come in. And yeah, just come check out the new digs. It's a lovely place.
Also, mention the LD group.
Oh, yes.
And I love the LD group.
That's right. We have a freshman student, Ben Engel. I love when I can name people. It's so empowering.
Yeah.
He's come from Armstrong School, and he's dyslexic. And one of the things, Armstrong is a school for people with dyslexia very specifically, and one of the things that they teach very well and very strongly is self-advocacy. So he comes to Kehillah this year as a 9th grader and says, I want to help teach other kids about self-advocacy the way I've been taught through Armstrong. So I want to start an LD club. So Mondays at lunch, there's an LD club. That's about the only description out there. So it's something that's going to be worked on. I think I've convinced him to change the name because it can be off-putting to some people that specifically, they're like, well, I'm not LD. So we're working on it. It's a work in progress, but every Monday at lunch, it's in the Learning Center. Kids can come in. We've had up to like 6 or 7 kids in there. Just really, really, it's a really neat thing to see. And we have students who have come in who have not been willing to share with anybody that they have anything going on, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, well, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Really, me too. Oh, and oh, I'm dyslexic. What does that mean? Tell us what it's like, Ben. What is it like when you read? And the joke this week at lunch was Ben was asking how you spell dyslexia. So, so there's a lightness to it, but there's also a real, there's a listening. And one of Ben's goals is to also include allies. Other students who may not have LD, but can certainly be the same way we have gay and straight and lesbian, diversity, all these different kinds of allies that we can be. So, thank you for the reminder.
Well, one of the things I was thinking is, what if you had like periodic workshops for the kids, so that they could maybe just short ones because they can't and
short attention span theater.
A few that are short ones that will cover different topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things kind of that I'm thinking about for next year and
but
the
maybe
years
gear
after
them
that.
all towards college, kind of say what you need to know for college, or
right.
So then it kind of makes them look like it's looking forward to something, and
absolutely
it's important.
Yeah, it's a great idea. What does self-advocacy look like in college? What do you need? Are you going to make use of the Learning Center resources at the university that you attend? What does that look like? How do you talk to professors?
But also some of the other strategies that you talked about too, knowing when they're not, just all the different little parts that you hear, the mental alert.
Yeah, excellent ideas. Okay, with that, I'm going to officially end the evening. It's very late. Thank you all for your patience and your attention. I'll be here for a little while if you want to come chat. Have an excellent rest of your evening.
Good seeing you.
And kudos, Erin. That was quite impressive.
Hi.
Kudos, Erin. Oh, nice to meet you. Yeah, she came up to me the whole way.